Hello, everybody. Happy November. Okay, not October. Happy November. Happy Halloween. Happy Diwali. Happy Day of the Dead. Right? These Halloween. What the fuck? These holidays have passed, but they, happened very recently. So I hope you all had good ones. Okay? This is my monthly reading wrap up for the month of October. Obviously, as that is the month that has just ended. I had big plans for October. I was going to read so many vampire books. I was going to read Dracula. I was going to read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I was going to read like all these spooky like thriller stories because I was like, I'm going to get into like the Halloween mood, like get all spooky and shit. I didn't do any of that. I read mostly books about orcs. More specifically, I read books about orcs having sex, so that's fucking awesome. All of the books that I read in October, I read digitally, so I didn't read any physical books. I didn't make any headway on my physical TBR, which is just awesome. In the month of October, I read 6 books, and then an additional 2 that I didn't finish. I got 80% of the way through them, and then DNF'd them. So I'm still going to talk about them in their own little section, because I want to talk about them, and I got most of the way through them, but obviously I did not finish them. So it's 8 books total, kind of. And obviously, all of them are digital. As I said, I read only digital books this month. So, yeah. I have no special order to go in because I didn't read any physical books, so let's just get right into it. The very first book that I read in the month of October was Gentlemen Prefer Villains by C Rochelle. This is the second book in the Villainous Things series. The first book is called Not All Himbos Wear Capes. Villainous Things is an MLM romance series about superheroes and supervillains coexisting in a world with humans. The setup is kind of that heroes and villains are a completely different species from humans. So it's kind of interesting, very deeply unserious. The second book follows the brother of one of the characters from the first book. His name is Wolfgang. He is a supervillain. His superpower is that with a touch, he can kill people. Like, his touch automatically kills, like he can't control it. And his like romantic pairing in this book is Simon. Simon is just a normal fucking guy who signs up to be Wolfgang's assistant. I really, really liked the romantic aspect of this book. I think it was a lot of fun, especially like the romantic development I thought was very interesting. I really, really liked Simon and Wolfgang's dynamic. Obviously, there is some drama about the fact that Wolfgang can't touch Simon because Wolfgang would fucking kill him. I think for me, the downfall of this book and also the downfall of the first book was really the like plot development, because in my opinion, this is a very deeply unserious series. I feel like really delving into plot and like political superhero matters and like, where do superheroes and supervillains come from? Why are they different species? Like, what the fuck ever. Like, I don't really care about that shit. I really wanted it to be like more fun. I wanted it to be more balls to the wall. And it is really fun and really just enjoyable to read when it is going for more like romance and just like silly shit and like we're beating up people because we're villains and whatever. But then it gets into the plot and the plot's just not that fucking interesting. So I don't give a shit. I gave this book 3.5 stars. I think I liked it about the same, maybe a little bit less as the first book. I did start the third book. I did not finish it. I got 70% of the way through. I might finish it next month. I don't fucking know. So that's Gentlemen Prefer Villains. 3.5 stars. The second book that I read in October was Awake in the Floating City by Susanna Kwan. This book is actually not yet out. It's actually coming out in May of 2025. I actually got this book through NetGalley, so thank you very much to NetGalley and Pantheon for giving me access to this book. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you! I love you! So Awake in the Floating City is the story of a girl who's living in San Francisco, I think about 50 years in the future, after climate change has really, brought a lot of destruction to the planet. So San Francisco is completely flooded, right? That's why it's called the Floating City. It never stops raining. Like, you would need fucking Noah's Ark to get out of there. The main character, her name is Beau, is like an elderly caretaker in San Francisco who used to be an artist, and she is like really struggling with a whole lot of complex feelings about life because her mother was like washed away in a flood in San Francisco, and she's kind of hoping that her mother will be found, but her cousin is like, hey, get out of there, like, we're in Canada, come to Canada, like, we'll get you, like, we'll pay for a boat and whatever, like, just come. And she's like, I don't know. So she stays in San Francisco and she gets a job taking care of this elderly woman named Mia. And it kind of reminds me of like a contemporary drama almost. Like, it's not really focused on the negative effects of climate change. Like, climate change here is not presented as a threatening thing. It's more presented as like just a thing that is happening concurrently while these people are living in San Francisco. It's really kind of a more like interpersonal drama type of book. I'll be honest and say that I did not get what I wanted from this book. I'm not going to hold that against it, but reading the description, I did think this was going to be like a fantasy novel. I'll admit that that is a failing on my part. Oops, I don't read book synopsises very closely. I like going in blind. So that's on me. I think just in general, this was not a book that is necessarily for me. I really like how climate change is kind of presented here. Like, it is not, again, presented as a threat. Most of the questions asked by the book are kind of like, how can we remember like things that happened in the past once they've been washed away, once they've been ruined by climate change? It's a book that really, really deals with like personal issues like depression, isolation, loneliness, meaning, purpose, like that kind of stuff. And again, it's just kind of not the book that I would usually be attracted to. I like more push and pull in my novels. I like a little bit more action. But I think overall, this is a very successful book. And I think if you are interested in this kind of book, I think you will like it. I think this book is incredibly well written. I think Susanna Kwan is kind of a master of the word. Even though this book was not for me, this is a book that I can clearly see is a very successful novel, and will probably be very successful and very effective for a lot of people. Just not me. I did end up giving it 3.5 stars. I give it 4 stars on Goodreads. Thank you again to NetGalley and Pantheon for this book. Love you lots. So the next book that I read, I'm actually like, I'm gonna kind of like clump these together because like these all count kind of in the same thing. I read all these books about orcs. I read The Sins of the Orc and The Fall of the Orc, which are the 2 books in Orc Forged by Finley Fenn. Orc Forged is a sister series to Orc Sworn. First book in the Orc Sworn series is The Orc and the Lady. No, The Lady and the Orc. Which I read a long time ago in 2021, and I didn't really like it. I had no clue these were like by the same author in the same world, but they are. And as I was reading them, I was like, oh my god. So I started rereading Orc Sworn as well. But for now, let's just talk about Orc Forged. Again, the first 2 books, The Sins of the Orc and The Fall of the Orc. So these are 2 MLM fantasy books about orcs and men, because they are MLM. The main series is not MLM, but I respect that Finley Fenn is, you know, branching out, doing, I was gonna say homosexual relationships. I feel like I don't really have that much to say about Orc Forged, either of the books in the series. They were good, but they weren't like amazing. I gave them both 3 stars. The Sins of the Orc is about 2 orcs getting together named Kest and Efterar, I think are their names. And like Kest is like the clan, like playboy, and then Efterar is like a healer. And they get together, and they were fine. The second book, The Fall of the Orc, was about a human lieutenant in a human army named Gerard, and then he kind of falls into a relationship with this other orc named Olar, who is a general or a captain in like the orc army, and they're like fighting, they're warring, but they fall in love, and it's beautiful. I liked the second one more than I liked the first one, I think. The characters in the second book did not really stick out to me. I think the characters in the first book were better, but overall, I feel very similarly about the 2. I feel kind of neutral good about them. So again, 3 stars for both of them. Let's move on to Orc Sworn. I read book 1, 3, and 4 in the Orc Sworn series. I skipped number 2. I got like 30% of the way through, and then I was like, I'm not fucking reading this. I don't want to read this one. Let me skip to book number 3. You know, I just did not give a shit. I did not care. Book number 2 just pissed me off. I was like, I'm not doing that. So the ones that I read The Lady and the Orc, I read The Librarian and the Orc, and I read The Duchess and the Orc. The first book, The Lady and the Orc, is about a lady. Her name is Lady Nor, Lady Jewel Nor, okay? And she is in a relationship with an abusive husband who fucking hates her. And one day he leaves, and she gets captured by orcs, and then she gets kind of she is forced to become the mate of the captain of the orcs named Grimmar. I think the big problem with the Lady and the Orc is that Grimmar is very toxic. Like, especially in the beginning, the relationship is incredibly toxic. Grimmar is like kind of a shithead, but also he's an orc. So like, you gotta like think about it not in like human terms. I mean, you kind of do, because this is like a book for humans. I don't fucking know. Jewel, I thought, was a good protagonist. I, again, don't love Grimmar, especially in the beginning, but he does kind of learn. He gets better. I'm not gonna be the one to hate on like a toxic romance. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, what the fuck ever. I originally did not like The Lady and the Orc when I first read it in 2021. I read it in 2021. And what I did not like about The Lady and the Orc in 2021 was the fact that there was exhibitionism. I don't give a shit now. It's not like I don't like it, but at the same time I was like, I can't read this. This is disgusting. Like, I don't give a like, leave me the fuck alone. I don't give a shit, bro. Like, why was that like your one thing that you really hated? For me, Finley Fenn is a very successful writer. I think she's very good at writing. However, in this first book, the writing is weaker. There are grammatical sentence level issues, right? But they do get better throughout the series. And I think especially like in the third and fourth book and also in Orc Forged, like the writing in those to me is very, very successful. And I liked it a lot. The next Orc book that I read was The Librarian of the Orc, which is obviously, again, Orc Sworn number 3, because I skipped the second one because I didn't give a shit. But I learned very quickly in this book was that this series is going to follow a pattern, and a very clear pattern, okay? 1, woman is abused by a man, some kind of figure in her life, a fiancé, okay? A husband, a dad, whatever, okay? She's kidnapped, taken, makes a deal with an orc, whatever, okay? And then they fuck. And she's like, wait, I fucking love this orc. I fucking love being with an orc. And then they fight. And then she's like, I fucking hate this orc. And then they fuck again. And she's like, I love this orc. And then they fight. And she's like, I fucking hate this orc. It's very repetitive and very annoying because these books are like 500 pages long. So it's like, you should not be 500 pages long. You are doing the same shit over and over again. And also, like, I don't want to hear, like, please, like, either make the dramatic scenes more dramatic. Like, I want girls who are like, I'm gonna kill myself if you don't leave me alone. That's what I want. You know what I mean? Like, I want drama, okay? And you're not giving me drama. You're kind of giving me, like, blasé, like, oh, I hate being with an orc. Oh, I hate being in Orc Mountain. Like, whatever the fuck. And it happens over and over again. Like, literally, every other chapter, it's like she's in love with the orc. She hates the orc. She loves the orc. She hates the orc. She loves the orc. She hates the orc. Choose one and stick to it for most of the fucking novel, okay? Because I can't fucking take this shit. It's very annoying. But I also kind of ate it up. The Librarian in the Orc follows a librarian. I think her name's Rosa. And an orc named John. They fall in love. And they're kind of fucking freaky. But that's okay. The next one that I read was The Duchess and the Orc. I can't remember the fucking orc's name in The Duchess and the Orc, but the Duchess's name is Maria. So, yeah. Same exact strengths, same exact weaknesses, okay? There is nothing new here. The variation in these books is mostly just like, where did the woman come from? Is she a duchess? Is she a librarian? Is she a lady? Whatever, right? And then what clan is the orc from? And like, what are they gonna do? Right? Like, the relationship is never fucking different. All these girls fucking blend together like a fucking sludge pot. I also think what is interesting about the series is that to me, it kind of reads like a more feminist Ice Planet Barbarians, where it's like the women start out in far more toxic relationships, right? But they end in much better places with far more bodily autonomy and like far more like just control. Another thing about Orc Sworn is that I think it's a series that would like really, really benefit from a dual POV. I think having a dual POV would really, really help because again, you have this like horrible dichotomy of like, she hates him, then she loves him, then she hates him, then she loves him. I would love to see some of that from the fucking orc perspective. I think that would give it more variation. I think that would give it like a little bit more depth, a little more difference. You know what I mean? Because the orc's feelings don't waver as much. That's Orc Sworn. That's all I have to say about them. I gave them all 4 stars because I enjoy the series. I'm all of the Orc Sworn books, not the Orc Forged books, okay? Let's be clear about that. All the Orc Sworn books, I gave 4 stars because I don't love them, but also I really enjoy them. There's something about them that is just like magnetic. And I think Finley Fenn is a very good writer. And that is kind of how she manages to keep me encaptured in her like slinky orc web. Because it's just like, she's good at fucking writing. And like usually romance books, especially this caliber of romance book, is kind of shittily written. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. Like, sorry, it's true. Like, that's how it is. And I feel like Finley Fenn is doing a step above that. So I get entranced. My big dream for an orc book is a sapphic orc book that follows a lot of these tropes. I feel like there are sapphic orc books out there, trust and believe, like literally what's the one? Legends and Lattes, that's a sapphic orc book. But like, I want a sapphic orc book that's kind of toxic. I want a human woman to get kidnapped by a fucking female orc. And I want them to have like beautiful orc love. You know what I mean? That's my fucking dream, and nobody does it. Like, hello. Anyway, let's talk about the 2 books that I DNF'd. So the first book that I DNF'd was A Lady of Rooksgrave Manor by Kathryn Moon. I DNF'd A Lady of Rooksgrave Manor at 80%. This is a like poly book where there's a woman, like she joins this brothel where all of the men who go to the brothel are like spooky monster creatures. So like gargoyles, vampires, sphinxes, I don't know, whatever the fuck, monsters, werewolves, shit. Dude, I don't even fucking know. She gets 5... What the hell is the word? Patrons. She gets 5 patrons. I just didn't give a shit. Like, I liked all the men that she was, you know, intertwined with. I thought they were all very interesting. I liked their dynamic altogether. But this is also a sex book, and the sex was not interesting to me on any level. Like, it wasn't hot, it wasn't cool, it wasn't fun, it wasn't funny, even. It was just fucking boring, right? It read to me the same way that, like, if you read about somebody, like, working at a fucking cafe, like, oh, I steeped the milk, I poured the fucking coffee into the cup, like, it read the same fucking way. You know what I mean? Somebody recommended this book to me on this idea that like it was kind of more feminist, like the main character was a really good female main character. And I'm not going to disagree on that point, but at the same time, a lot of my problems with females in books is that they are often pitted against other females, which is something that never happens in Orcs War. It's never like, oh, this other woman is the enemy. No, but it happens in this book. Like, there's just this fucking one girl who's like working at the brothel who does not really want to be working there. She's working there for money, which is like, no fucking hate. Like, why is she the villain, right? Like, she's not a good person, but also she shouldn't be seen as the villain. She's not the fucking enemy. She's just a girl who doesn't want to be working there. Like, I feel like that's the real problem. Women are always fucking pitted against each other. So that, it was kind of recommended to me on this level that just, I did not feel. That's all I have to say about A Lady of Rooksgrave Manor. The second book that I did not finish was Getting It On with Gargoyles by Hazel Mack. I DNF'd this at 83%. I just didn't want to fucking finish it. It was not horrible. It was not good. Lackluster writing, lackluster characters. The idea is that there are these 3 sisters who kind of stumble upon this town that is a safe haven for monsters, and they kind of get like stuck there because they have to be like background checked and shit, so they're not allowed out. But the main character in this book, again, she's supposed to be funny. She was not that funny. The only way that I knew that she was supposed to be the funny one is because the author fucking told us. She never made a funny joke in my fucking life. You know what I mean? Like, I was reading this shit and I was like, you are not fucking funny. Who said you're the funny one? I don't know. That's just it. That's it. I just didn't feel like finishing it. And so I didn't. And I'm not gonna, because I don't wanna. So that's everything. That's all the books that I read. That's all the books that I DNF'd. Hopefully this month I will read more physical books. If I don't, I will die. Anyway. Au revoir. Bye.